So today with me to help me in the studios with the discussion is Faith Ben Daniels. She's a lecturer at University of Education, that's Winneba Kumasi campus here. She's with the Department of Languages and she's the one going to help us with today's discussion. She's also a motivational speaker, and today as we discuss abuse in relationships or abusive relationship, she will help us with the discussion. Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening, Will.
How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
Welcome to Inspiration.
Thank you very much.
So today we're discussing abuse in relationship or abusive relationship. But we'll start from what abuse is, then we take it from to the other side as the relationship aspect. So when we talk about abuse, what does it mean?
When we talk about abuse, we are simply saying that it is a pattern of aggressive behavior that is used to intimidate or oppress another person. That is abuse.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when we talk about abuse in relationship,
then when we are talking of abuse in relationships or abusive relationships, then we are saying that it is the same pattern of aggressive behavior that is used to control or intimidate your partner. Okay. It could be a partner that you are still in a relationship with, or a partner that the relationship is over.
Okay.
So an ex-partner.
Okay, so you can even abuse an ex-partner?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So what are the forms of abuse we have?
We have physical abuse. That is when there is physical motions like hitting the person, slapping the person, pushing the person over. That's physical abuse. We also have financial abuse. Okay. It has to do with controlling the person's finances, controlling the person's money. We also have emotional abuse. You are not hitting the person physically, but you are torturing the emotion or the psychology of the person. Usually it has to do with insults or saying things to the person that makes the person feel intimidated or makes the person feel less of a human being.
Okay.
Yes.
So when we take it to the biblical aspect, are there any instances in the Bible where some people were abused?
Yes, of course. If you go to 1 Samuel chapter 25, there's the story of Abigail and her husband Nabal. That is when David was running away from Saul with his band of bandits. They happened to pass through Nabal's land, and Nabal was a rich man. Let me read from 1 Samuel 25 verse 2. It says that now there was a man in Maon whose business was in Carmel, and the man was very rich. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, and he was sharing his sheep in Carmel. The name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife Abigail. Now we all know the story of how David and his men helped in taking care of Nabal's livestock. And then when at the end of the day they asked Nabal for some form of payment, which was the proper thing to do, and Nabal's response, and you know Nabal's unfair and insultive response angered David and his men, and they were on their way to attack Nabal when they were intercepted by his wife. So I would read verse 23 of the same 1 Samuel chapter 25. Now when Abigail saw David, she dismounted quickly from the donkey, fell on her face before David, and bowed down to the ground. So she fell at his feet and said, "On me, my lord, on me let this iniquity be. And please let your maidservants speak in your ears and hear the words of your maidservants. Please let not my lord regard this scoundrel Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, your maidservant, did not see the young men of my lord whom you sent." So you could see from the way the woman describes her husband that she is in an abusive relationship. A man who has no respect for anybody, and certainly no respect for his wife as well. But God being so good, we're talking of a woman with wisdom who quickly saves the situation. If not, David and his men of bandits, we are talking about 400 men who were bandits, outlaws, social rejects with David, 400 violent men. And then you have a husband like Nabal insulting them.
Regardless of their numbers.
Yes.
So, Auntie, when we talk about this abuse and other things, why would someone even abuse the partner? Why would you abuse someone you love?
It's due to various reasons. People abuse their partners for various reasons. First, maybe the one abusing comes from a background of abuse.
Okay.
For instance, as a child, he or she has seen his parents or his guardians physically abusing each other or emotionally or verbally abusing each other. Habits tend to stick.
Yeah.
So he or she tends to believe that that is how human relationships should be. And then number two, it could also stem out of low self-esteem in the part of the one abusing. Yes. So in order to sort of massage an ego he or she does not have, they tend to suppress their partner just to feel good about themselves. Yes.
So apart from maybe physically abusing the person that may or sometimes have emotions attached, can abuse affect a person psychologically?
Yes, abuse can affect a person psychologically. For instance, if a man or a woman is in an abusive relationship, you can easily tell from the way they react to tense, or if I should use the word, aggressive situations. Especially at my place of work, dealing with women, young, middle-aged women who are married but are students. There are some you are just rushing to hold or hug the person and the person walks you off. When somebody does that, it could be that the person is in an abusive, a physically abusive relationship. So they are always very alert. So they are unable to tell that it is just a hug or it is just a friendly pat, because all the time they are waiting for a blow. So they are finding ways and means to fend off that sort of physical blow. Number two, they themselves are quite aggressive. Something little and it can turn into, a huge spark. You don't expect the person to react in that way, but then the person reacts in that way. It could also be that the person is in an abusive relationship. Yes.
Okay, but it's getting to a point that you begin to realize there are some people that are in relationships and they are being abused, and some think abuse is normal or a form of love. Why would anybody think this way?
You see, it's like I said, it still has to do with the psychology of the person.
Okay.
Because there are people who would tell you that if my partner doesn't physically abuse me, or if my partner doesn't beat me, then he or she does not love me. It's because that is what the person has been taught. For instance, if the person has grown up in an abusive family where he or she sees his father or the mother physically attacking the other, and then after that they still cook and eat together or go out and buy things and come home all smiles, he or she begins to think that that is the way to express love. So in his or her relationship, that is how they deal with it, by expressing their love aggressively and then trying to make do by buying the one they've abused things, taking the person out, making the person feel good. And in doing this too, they make you, the one who is at the receiving end of the abuse, believe that it is your fault. So once the person comes around and is trying to be all nice, then you think that that is how he or she expresses love.
So, for instance, if you've been abused and the person comes like, oh, if you didn't do this, I wouldn't have even touched you. Then once he buys you items or makes you feel it was your fault, then you also begin to reason that, oh, if I hadn't done that, he really wouldn't have touched me because he's a nice person or all that. So at the point you begin to feel that probably it's normal for him to beat you or for him to abuse you in that way. But doesn't it also mean that, like you stated earlier on, when you come back to the person, you make the person feel some intimacy after you've abused the person? Doesn't it also mean that probably is the aftermath of the abuse the person enjoys and not the abuse? Because probably the beating is not what the person likes, but the fact that after beating her, you buy her items, or that is the only time that she gets the intimacy she really wants after the abuse. So it also means that it's not the beating she enjoys, but what happens after the beating, that's what she enjoys. Could that be true?
Yes, probably. It's, of course, a physical abuse, pain. The person is inflicting pain, so it's painful. But then after that, the if I should use the word enjoyment, although I don't want to use that word, but then the enjoyment follows. So of course the person, like you're saying, might not enjoy the pain, but enjoy the enjoyment after the pain. But it is all psychologically. It's all psychological, because it's the psyche of the person that has been turned with time. It doesn't happen in a day. It takes time. Little by little, the psyche of the person begins to turn around to accept that sort of relationship. So that is why we also talk about sexual abuse as well. Some people would tell you that until the person ties me, hits me with a stick, or slaps me in the whole intimate affair, then we are not being intimate, or we are not having sex. All of this is the psyche. It's built over time, and it begins from childhood experiences. What the individual who is being abused and the one meting out the abuse have been exposed to from childhood. Yes,
that's very true, because I met this male friend of mine who told me that he had a female friend who openly told him that for her, unless she's forced by her partner, no matter how she loves you, she can't make out with you unless you force her, because that's the experience her first guy taught her. He forced her over and over again, so it's now like a part of her. Before she can willingly do anything with any of her partners, you have to force her. So she thinks it's the normal way to do such things. But why do people stay in abusive relationships? Why will you stay and be abused?
You see, relationships are built over time. For instance, you've married the person, and you know that our Bible says that God hates divorce. It's clearly stated there. That's one. And two, I told you earlier on that the one abusing you always makes you, the one at the receiving end of the abuse, feel that it's your fault. People who abuse always, they do not accept the blame. They always say, he provoked me, or she provoked me. So with time, the one receiving the abuse begins to believe that it is my fault. And if it is your fault, the psychology of the person, when love is involved, begins to play out. I can change him, or I can change her. If when he comes, he wants, for instance, he wants his food at 7. So I must ensure that his food should be there at 7. He doesn't want noise, so I must ensure that there should be no noise. If I ensure that there is no noise, he wouldn't beat me. Our relationship would go on fine. So they keep making excuses for the one meting out the abuse.
Could that be love?
Sometimes I wouldn't say it's love, but I would rather want to describe it as fear.
Okay.
Fear of the unknown. Afraid of walking out of the relationship and moving on. Because there are some people, when you talk to them, you tell them, why don't you leave? Where am I going to? And where can I hide? Wherever I go, he will catch me. He will come and find me. So I better stay there with him. I can't leave. You know, and that has been built into her psychology over a period of time, where he or she begins to make the one at the receiving end feel that you can't go anywhere. You are stuck with me. If you go anywhere, I'll find you. Usually it's not true, but they make you believe that it is true.
So the feeling between you and your partner is now like that of a master and a servant.
Yes. And so you are forced to stay. You are afraid to leave. Sometimes they threaten you. If you leave me, I will kill your son, or I will kill your mother. They attack something that you love and you cherish. So you begin to sacrifice your happiness and your safety for that you love, or for the person you love. You want to leave me. If you leave me, I'll take your children away from you. You will never see your children again. You will never come near your children. You don't want to leave your children alone with such a person. So you are forced to stay. So it takes time.
It's quite unfortunate. Is it that difficult to admit you are being abused?
Yes. In some situations, it is very difficult. In the situations where it is difficult, sometimes fear, like I said, is part of it. And number two, shame as well. So you see that there is a bruise on the person's cheek. There's a bruise on the arm. You ask and you said, oh, I fell.
I fell.
Oh, I slipped. Oh, it was the kitchen knife. And you begin to wonder if the person's house is filled with robots that are knocking him or her about all the time. But they keep making these excuses because they are shy sometimes for people to find out that they are unhappy in their relationships. And sometimes too, it is fear. And sometimes some people actually believe that they can handle it. That they do not need a third party to come in, that it is a situation they can handle. But then when they finally realize that they can no longer handle it, it's probably too late.
Why do people sometimes want to pretend as if things are okay when they are not? For instance, with the examples you just gave, the person would try to do everything, even with friends or people she thinks that, or she knows that she can get help from, but she will still pretend, oh, it's normal, it's nothing, oh, I'm okay. Is it that they just want to be with the person? Is it that they feel, so embarrassed discussing such issues, or why?
Sometimes, like you said, it could be embarrassment because everybody came. It was all beautiful, all rosy, and then all of a sudden you're going to tell them that, hey, things are not going too well. It happens for people who find keeping up appearances very important. There are some people who, for them, keeping up appearances is everything. They must keep up a certain sort of societal image or community image, that their lives are perfect, their relationships are perfect, their children are perfect. With such people, accepting or coming out to say that, help me, I'm in an abusive relationship, is very difficult. And then there are those others too who think that there is nobody to turn to, that they are all alone, so they must deal with it by themselves. And then, of course, there are those who are simply afraid to speak out. So it depends.
So is there any possibility of you determining the chances of being abused in a relationship? For instance, we all know that if a man is coming to propose to you and he comes with a cane, you wouldn't accept. He comes with a slap, obviously you wouldn't accept. But you go into it before all these things manifest. Is there any chances of you seeing the possibility of abuse in this relationship, even when you haven't gotten too deep with a person?
Yes, of course. As a Christian, I would always say that God speaks to us. God speaks to us every day. He speaks to us all the time. He is always speaking to us. It is just that sometimes we do not listen. And what we must understand as Christians is that God takes our human relationships very important, especially marriage, because it is an institution that He Himself ordained. And physically, he's the one who blessed physically the very first marriage between Adam and Eve. So for our Father, it is very important who we are marrying. So He doesn't keep quiet when it comes to that relationship. He's always speaking, but we don't listen. He speaks to us, especially in dreams. You would see you are moving out, or you start even an ordinary friendship with somebody that you are beginning to have an emotional attachment to. Immediately God will speak to you. For those that I have dealt with who are really honest, they will tell you, Madam, if I say God didn't speak to me about this, I am lying. One told me that when he met his wife, he is in an abusive relationship. The abuse is meted out on the man. He told me that when I met her and I wanted to marry her, my favorite food is rice. I had a dream I was eating rice and it was filled with maggots, but I was insisting on eating the rice. So when I entered the relationship and things started to play out, that was when he realized that I should have taken this dream seriously. And there are many more examples, but for time factor, we'll just skip to this one. But God always speaks to us. And aside that, there are physical signs. For instance, you see that the person, or he or she, comes up too strong right in the beginning of the relationship. He or she wants to take control of your life, wants to take control of the colors of your clothes, on your hairstyle, on your general outlook. That is a warning sign that you should be careful about such a person. And then constant jealousy. The list, who is that? Who are you talking to? Who called you? Where from this text message? Just, you should begin to sit back and assess the situation. Some people want to feel good that, oh, my partner is jealous, it means he loves me. There is, of course, there is always, a bit of jealousy. Even for us who are married, sometimes we go to church and somebody is talking to us and we are standing there and tapping our toes. Come on, let's start going home. It's normal, but when it becomes overbearing, just at the beginning of the relationship, too many questions, and then you see anger and aggression following the questions, you have to be very careful about continuing with such an individual. And then the person has unrealistic expectations of you, wants you to be at a certain place where you feel it's unrealistic, wants you to speak in a certain way, walk in a certain way, do things in a certain way. Sort of unrealistic, controlling behavior. You also need to be very careful about that.
Okay. So Auntie, I would like us to spend my time talking about these signs of seeing the possibility of abuse, so we can even prevent them before we solve them. But we have to go for a short commercial break, so when we return, then we can talk about that. Inspiration After Church continues shortly. Please do stay.
Say onipa bia kan kro ene ne ba aya na ejina sisi so nanso ekoba se sisi ne ho kotechima ene na asempa ene dia bon eno ti na make for tabia herbal capsules e dia ma se yesisi yade pa ana age onipa bia na boso dia bomodia ne num tabia herbal capsules na abo yi di usisi mama mai na wanya sisi etimi abo aduma pa se ya ayemtim na age yefunu ya boso ama wuntimi nya wo ho hia bomodia ne num tabia herbal capsules na etimi yi ni pefi afini pedienim ama wo yefunu ada ho tabia herbal capsules ebuso ewo pharmacy shops ene herbal shops ewo wiase afa na nyina ana afre ahomatrufo yi 0243686861 kai se wo ma akranufuo wo your penfo ana wondi infedu wochi a wonnum bi tabia herbal capsules wonsunum bi